Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Long and Winding Railroad. Our look at the classic era of All Japan Pro Wrestling of the 1990s here at Post Wrestling. And joining me this month on this episode, this is episode 37. Yes, correct. Episode 37. And joining me is first time guest and the first time I've ever recorded something with this particular guest. It's Bruce Lord, the Brew Dog, as coined by my nemesis, Brandon from New Jersey.
I can't wait for his episode of the Long and Winding
Well,
Railroad. WH,
how about I just say don't hold your breath, because that's never going to happen.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, no, I feel kind of a bit of pressure on me here that this is the first time that you and I have done a podcast together. We haven't done a G1 review or anything like that. And look, this is a podcast that has featured some very illustrious names, from Tom Lawler, the world's second biggest Boy George fan after my partner, to arguably the preeminent Western ambassador of this era of wrestling that, we currently have in Eddie Kingston, to my fellow Lower Mainlander, the wrestling genius Daniel Makabe, a man that I know you're a fan of, WH, who I'll be seeing take on Cat Power this weekend at the fabulous Commodore Ballroom for Nation Extreme Wrestling. Shout out to my old pal, Rob. And that's not even to mention the who's who of wrestling writers and analysts you've had on, many of whom, in all seriousness, have very much helped to shape and improve my understanding and appreciation of Puro in general, and specifically this period. I certainly cannot measure up to those people in terms of experience or knowledge, but I'd like to think that the excitement and love for pro wrestling that watching just about any match featuring Kenta Kobashi kindles within me means that having me on here won't be a complete waste of everyone's time, WH.
Wow, you forgot to mention John Cena and slandering that poor man. What a shake my head.
Who'd he ever beat?
Actually, let's not go there. We love John Cena here at the Long and Winding Railroad. It's all in jest, John. It's all in jest. All right, so this is episode 37. And Bruce's pick for the match that we're going to talk about is featuring the great Kenta Kobashi. I think if you were to build the perfect pro wrestler, a lot of people might say Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson. I couldn't argue with that. But I would say, for my money, the perfect pro wrestler is Kenta Kobashi. And there's a lot of reasons why I would say that, even though he's not my favorite pillar. My favorite pillar is Kawada, because I love Kawada's story. But if I was to pick a guy who I'd build a promotion around, it would be Kenta Kobashi.
Absolutely. I know that you're a Kawada guy, but you've also, I think, really made the case for Kobashi, as being just about kind of the ultimate natural baby face. And I'm very much in agreement with you there. I've talked on other podcasts about kind of how watching Wrestle Kingdom 9 was a big breakthrough moment for me. But in addition to that, there was a period a few years ago when my buddy Alex, who I do some other non-wrestling kind of music-related podcasting with, he just downloaded a whole big cache of Puro and Joshi. And a few years ago, when we were both kind of really getting back into wrestling hardcore, after we finished recording a podcast of our own, we'd sit back, crack a beer, and just kind of move through that archive and just throw a match or two on that really, had a name that we'd heard of or sounded interesting to us, and watch our way through that. We were going through it kind of blind and totally out of chronology, but over a few months, Alex became very much fixated on Manami Toyota and even went so far as to name one of his cats after her, while I got hooked on Akira Hokuto and Kenta Kobashi. And for me, it's not just Kobashi's fire or intensity that drew me in, or even the quality of his matches in terms of work. And oh boy, is there a lot of work in the match that we're going to be talking about today. I think there's something intangible in the way that he brings those forces together in such a way that you cannot help but root for him and get behind him no matter the situation. And so often I think that when we talk about natural baby faces, they often have something either of like the natural underdog in them, like a Bryan Danielson, at least in the WWE, or a Rey Mysterio, or they have the deck stacked against them by cheating nemesis, the way that like Bruno or Steamboat do. Kobashi is this huge, strong, seemingly just preternaturally natural athlete who's going into fair contests with other wrestlers, and yet you just end up completely giving yourself over in needing to see him win, to needing to see that fire and passion that he is always exuding be borne out in the result of the match. And it's for those reasons that I'm very much agreement with you that, you know, he's one of the easiest layup baby faces of all time, if not the greatest natural baby face of all time.
For sure. And we're going to be talking about a match he has with one Dr. Death, Steve Williams, one of my favorite foreign wrestlers to wrestle in All Japan, but also like actually one of my favorite wrestlers. Like I was a fan of this guy when I was just reading the Aftermags, and I'd see like when they would cover Mid-South and the UWF, and I'm like, if you look at Steve Williams back then, and even up to like when he's like, like kind of broken down, he's a very imposing figure. And then you actually watch him wrestle and work, and it's like, holy shit, this guy's actually a really good wrestler. He's super athletic. He's not just a big dude. He uses his strength and his size perfectly. And I'm always a big fan of Dr. Death. And I'm you know what? He has my favorite boot designs ever in wrestling.
I was listening to your earlier episode of Long and Winding Royal Road with Davie Portman talking about kind of the precursor to this match, Kobashi and Williams' match from 1993. And you were putting his boot game over big. And yeah, from the boots to the robe to just the kind of the boxer's shuffle that he always has, there's just that kind of like credibility and intensity in the presentation of Williams, at least primary of Williams's stuff all the way through. I have to admit that unlike yourself and unlike, Nate Milton and so many other people who I think had kind of a more thorough wrestling education much earlier than I did, I'm one of those people who grows up only ever having watched the WWF. So with the Brawl for All fiasco, when you had Jim Ross going on for weeks and weeks and weeks about the resume of this merciless killing machine who has destroyed everyone in Japan for the past few years, and how he's going to come in here and just knock everyone the fuck out, and then he gets dropped by Bart Gunn in the second round. Williams never really had a chance to kind of get out of the starting gate with me and my friends who are watching WWF in the 1990s, which is obviously just an effect of what a dumb fucking idea that whole thing was. So all of that is to say that because I got off on such of a wrong foot with him, I always welcome any chance to correct that first impression. And anytime I have gone back and watched Williams working in All Japan or in WCW, Mid-South, wherever it happens to be, anything from his past career up until a certain point at least, I'm never sorry that I do so, and it always washes out a little bit of the bad taste in my mouth that first impression left.
I think with Steve Williams, one thing I really love about him, and this is also true of Kenta Kobashi, is that he has a near kind of perfect career of like both as a singles wrestler and more importantly for me as a tag team wrestler, because I think like there are some wrestlers that I love, but like you don't have a great tag team resume yet. Like Bryan Danielson is a good example. He does not have a great tag team resume yet, and I'm waiting for him to team up with young Wheeler Yuta and have a 1 year run with those AEW tag team titles, baby, because I think that's what he needs to just cement it for me personally, right? But like Steve Williams, part of two amazing tag teams. I'll tell you, the first one is obviously the one with Terry Gordy, the Miracle Violence Connection, greatest tag team fucking name ever of all time.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
And then people might be surprised. My other favorite tag team with Steve Williams is the Varsity Club with Mike Rotunda in Jim Crockett Promotions, and They had a brief run with the NWA World Tag Team titles. They defeated the Road Warriors. And I thought, what a perfect tag team. Like you have Steve Williams and you had, the powerhouse of the team who could also wrestle, but you had like a great technical wrestler in Mike Rotunda. And I'm a huge fan of the Varsity Club gimmick. Why Kevin Sullivan was the head of it, I have no idea. But, like the singlet, like, and that's when Doc started wearing the singlet, I was like, fuck yeah, that's a cool look. And he wears it sometimes with in the Miracle Violence Connection in Japan. He doesn't wear it for like any of these singles matches that I've, the one I talked about with Davey. from 93, and then today's match that we're going to talk about from 1994.
You'd be a better person to be able to speak to this, I think, in terms of the Japanese fans or Japanese audiences' reaction or reception or interpretation of that sort of American collegiate, amateur wrestler archetype that we saw, work a lot, I think, in, Southern territories and whatnot. But obviously that, Vince McMahon had little time for, not really understanding the Steiners or whatever it might be, and how it is that sense of, credibility that people like Williams brought to the idea of somebody who has that kind of like pure athletic amateur sort of background, and then coming into the Japanese system. I'd be kind of, I don't know if this is really the time or the place to kind of get into that in terms of how that archetype maybe compares to, like the wild man Brody character, or, the cowboy of Hansen, how just this like, pure athlete kind of gets over. I mean, obviously, for better or for worse, the Lesnar thing is something that Japan takes a kick at the can at much after the Williams.
I mean, they're like, because like the press and the commentators in whatever promotion he'd be working for in Japan would play out the fact that he is, like he has legit amateur wrestling credentials. They love that. Like they love that about like someone like Jumbo Tsuruta, and they love like if you have a legit background and say like sumo, like Genichiro Tenryu does, and then they play that up with Williams. Yes, they would talk about that in the press. They would talk about that on commentary with Dr. Dusty Williams. Oh, like he's wearing a singlet because like he is actually a legitimate collegiate wrestler, and he went really far, and he's also like a legit tough American football player, and all these things, and so yeah, it plays a large part, like versus like, oh, there's his partner is big tough Terry Gordy who started drinking a lot with Michael Hayes at the age of 16. I don't know.
I mean, it's a balancing effect, night and day sort of effect there, I suppose.
I'm sorry. By the way, I don't mean any disrespect to Terry Gordy. I am a huge fan of Terry Gordy. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's just like you sort of say, or even alluding to with the Rotunda thing in terms of the slight differences there. You need a little bit of balance between the two of them, and whether that's thorny old Brian Danielson with young and peppy Wheeler Yuta, or whatever it might be. I know that on earlier episodes of the Long and Winding Royal Road, you've stood up for some of the more unlikely pairings that Kobashi has had, with the likes of Johnny Ace and Del Wilkes and things like that.
Oh yeah, like the global energetic tough. what a great team! Great unit name, Yeah, no, I mean, my favorite tag team with Kenta Kobashi is, of course, Burning with Jun Akiyama. I think it's a perfect tag team. I love it more. I like that team a lot more than his tag team with Misawa, even though that has probably greater cachet among fans. Their matches with the Holy Demon Army. But I am a huge fan of the Burning faction of Kobashi and Akiyama with a couple other guys. But yes, let us talk about today's match, Bruce. It is from September 3rd, 1994. As we record this, we're recording this on September 5th. So I actually watched this again for the first time in a long time on September 3rd. So it was kind of like an anniversary viewing for me. It is Kenta Kobashi versus Steve Williams. It is for Steve Williams' Triple Crown title, which he won from one Mitsuharu Misawa. He ended Misawa's 705-day reign as a Triple Crown heavyweight champion. I think much to the surprise of a lot of people. I think a lot of people were expecting Kawada to be the one who ended his reign, but it was not him. It was Dr. Death Steve Williams. So that was about 2 months prior to the match that we're going to talk about. So back in July, he did that. And this is a sequel to Kenta Kobashi's match with Steve Williams from August 31st, 1993, almost to the year that they're having this rematch. That the 93 match was a number one contenders match that Steve Williams won. And now we will talk about this match. And if you haven't watched it already, and you're gonna watch it later after we do the review, which is a very odd sequence of events, to plan out for yourself. But hey, we will talk about whether or not Kenta Kobashi is able to eke out a win over Dr. Death here on this contest. But let's talk about this. This show is from the All Japan Summer Action Series 2 tour from 1994. It's day 11. I believe it's the last day of the tour. It's from the Budokan Hall, one of my favorite places to watch wrestling, Bruce, because my God, the air conditioning in that building is fucking amazing.
That's wrestling promoters around the world. If you want this man's endorsement, that know that is what WH Park lives and dies by is the ambient temperature in your room. To break the fourth wall here, we had a conversation for about 3 minutes before we started recording about the various air conditioning and fan options happening in our respective apartments.
That's right, and so probably I will never put over any GCW show because I hear their air conditioning options are rather dire, to be quite honest. And but back to Budokan Hall, this show garnered an attendance of 16,300 people, pretty much a sellout for All Japan, which was very common during this era that they would sell out Budokan regularly, which is it's similar to like Bruno's record of selling out, like Madison Square Garden, like I don't know how many times, but 16,000 people is nothing to sneeze at in 1990. So let's talk about this card before we get to the match itself, Bruce. So starting things off was a singles match between Mighty Inoue, who defeated young rookie Kentaro Shiga in 6 minutes and 15 seconds. A tag team match was next. The Youngbloods, Chris Youngblood and Mark Youngblood, the brothers of Jay Youngblood, defeated Super Generation Army of Satoru Asako and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi in 9 minutes 35 seconds. 6-man tag team match, the old man comedy match on the card. Masao Inoue, Mitsuo Momota, and Rusher Kimura defeated Haruka Aigen, Masanobu Fuchi, and Ryukaku Izumida, which I'm sure there was Haruka Aigen spitting into the audience spot. That's why you will see usually people in the front row having newspapers during his matches to make sure his spit does not land on them.
We give Noah grief for the old man comedy matches early on, but it's a long-standing tradition, as we're finding out here.
It is a 6-man tag team match. Doug Furness, the Eagle, and the Falcon. It's a menagerie of birds here. Defeat Johnny Ace, Johnny Smith, and Ricky Santana in 12 minutes and 43 seconds. All Japan World Junior Heavyweight title match. Danny Crockett, the champion, successfully defends his title by defeating Yoshinari Agawa in 13 minutes and 32 seconds. And correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe I reviewed this match.
You definitely reviewed was it Crockett? There was definitely been at least one Ogawa match in the series. And let's see here, in terms of, we've got Ogawa, and then to jump ahead a little bit, we've got Akiyama. Is there anybody else from this card still working besides those two?
No. Unfortunately, probably more due to death than anything else. Singles match, Stan Hansen defeats Jun Akiyama in 8 minutes and 23 seconds. Semi-main event, Giant Baba, Mitsuharu Misawa, and Taman Honda defeat the Holy Demon Army combination of Akira Taue, Toshiaki Kawada, and Takao Omori in 30 minutes and 59 seconds. I don't know if I want to see a 31-minute match featuring Giant Baba.
Not at this point in time, yeah.
No. And finally, and then of course our main event is Steve Williams defending the Triple Crown title against Kenta Kobashi. All right, so let's get into the match, Bruce. Do you have any thoughts before we actually get into this talking about what happens in the match itself?
Well, just maybe as to why I selected this one. One, I think there's a lot of interesting connective tissue between it and, as you alluded to, the match that it is a sequel of that you reviewed earlier in this series. And I imagine we'll be talking about that at a couple of points throughout our discussion of the match itself. But as far as this match in particular, there used to be a supercut video on YouTube of all of Kobashi's Triple Crown challenges and defenses all linked together, which ended up being 10 hours long. And there were a whole number of times when on the weekend or whatever, and I had a free day or something like that, I'd pull that video up and say, okay, today is the day I'm going to get through all of them. And invariably, I would have to stop after 2 or 3 matches maximum, partially due to their length, but partially due to there being, it's possible to have too much of a good thing. And, you watch a couple of Kobashi like main events and you just get so amped up, you just end up wanting to drop kick your refrigerator. So in a nutshell, I've seen this match a whole lot. And I do think that even if you haven't seen the 93 match, it is a great introduction to what makes Kobashi so endearing, as we were both talking about off the top.
There's a lot of, like callbacks to their 93 match. I mean, particularly with, Dr. Death's finisher, the what the Japanese call the dangerous backdrop driver, which Dr. Death refers to as the dangerous backdrop driver. I just call it the backdrop driver because I think that's just simpler, but
I just call it in the previous match just 3 consecutive attempted murders that were never prosecuted in any court of law.
No.
Jesus.
You do not want to take like the high angle backdrop driver from Dr. Davie Williams, like or from anyone else for that matter, who might be like, hey, you know Dr. Davie Williams, he's got his finisher was this high angle backdrop. You just say no to that person, please.
Yeah, no. And if you haven't seen that match, it's I think a very kind of like still like kind of young and a little bit wet behind the ears Kobashi, just kind of coming off almost a little bit half cocked and just kind of impetuous and just trying to get these flurries of offense out. Whereas Williams just sort of, he's almost kind of confused and bemused by Kobashi. Like, what's this young guy playing at, until his patience with this young man just wears out. Okay, fine. You countered a Dr. Bomb. You got out of an Oklahoma Stampede. I just have to break your neck until you stay down. God damn it. And that's effectively how that match finishes.
All right. So the match starts with both men locking up and going to the mat. And here, it's great. Kobashi is able to catch Williams by surprise with a series of rolling cradles that gives Kobashi an early psychological advantage with the first 2 count of the match. They then engage in a test of strength with the Greco-Roman knuckle lock, and they're just like going back and forth, who's stronger, like, and the fact that Williams is like, okay, Kobashi's going to be next, one of the next guys. I got to make sure I don't make him look foolish, and I got to give him a lot in this test of strength. And of course, legit, Kobashi's a pretty strong fucking dude if you just look at him, right?
And in kayfabe, I think in the first opening sequences there, you can see sort of a slightly new kind of wariness and a little bit more experience in Kobashi in the feeling out process. He's not just immediately going for the neck the way he did last time. He's showing off a little bit of his grappling technique, and I think there's maybe a little bit of like learned fearful respect in there as well, right? In kayfabe, Christ, this guy like nearly snapped my neck off the last time, or not. They had a championship carnival match a few months earlier, which I really wanted to find, but I wasn't able to track down. I think he's approaching Williams a little bit more cautiously, and as a result, this match I think is a bit more spaced out for it.
They go back and forth with the test of strength until Kobashi is able to take Doc's back, and then Dr. Death is able to reverse that. There's a chop exchange with both men no selling the other strikes. There's 2 Kobashi shoulder tackles, and with the second one, Kobashi is able to knock Dr. Death down. Kobashi follows up with a drop kick that sends Steve Williams to the outside. From here, Kobashi DDTs Dr. Death on the outside and follows up with a body slam. And then, he hits him with this amazing, top turnbuckle dive, where he's on the top turnbuckle. Dr. Death is on the ground, and he dives onto him. And like a man that size it's impressive and really scary to watch that. And this is something like, people like wonder why Hiroshi Tanahashi is crazy. He does that kind of move all the time. It's because Kenta Kobashi, when he was growing up, was his favorite wrestler. And I'm pretty sure this is a move he stole from Kenta Kobashi.
And let's not forget that Kobashi probably has, I don't know, 60, 70 pounds on peak Tana, probably at this point, or something close to it. This whole sequence is effectively photocopied from that previous 1993 match, though it happens a little bit earlier in this match. And if you watch it play out this time, Kobashi's much more measured as he does it and as he executes it. He kind of ensures that, Williams is under his control and under his thumb throughout it, rather than just trying to unload this series of moves as fast as possible. But yeah, in terms of that turnbuckle dive, there's just something special about seeing somebody of Kobashi's size do moves like this. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Kobashi, but I'm thinking about the reactions the crowd recently gave to Yota Tsuji, in his match with Sonata at Dominion, many of whom were probably seeing this like far too aerial for somebody of Tsuji's size lucha offense there. And what an immediate impression that sort of thing makes on a crowd.
Kobashi throws Dr. Death into the barricades and does a leg drop across the back of his neck, setting up possibly a lariat to finish the match later. Kobashi takes control of the match for the next several minutes until Williams catches Kobashi trying another flying shoulder tackle, and Doc just bats him away. Just a very impressive feat of strength on his part.
There's so many wonderful counters that basically involve just like taking a step back and shoving the other guy away throughout this match. And when you have, again, guys of this size and of this weight class, it's just impressive. It's really easy to miss, but kind of in the middle, or at this point here, there's a spot where Williams's head just gets slammed into the top turnbuckle, and the side of his head just goes in at this flat horizontal angle. And he spends the next minute just kind of shaking off the whiplash and kind of trying to deal with this blow to the equilibrium. And you can see him just lightly working it in there for the next few minutes of the match. There's this like reactionary attitude these days that, nobody sells anymore, which I know people have been saying for decades. But the reaction to that criticism is this like over the top garbage selling that, you'll see on NXT or whatnot. Just, oh, my neck. Oh, my back. See, clearly communicate to people. Like, somebody is limping through the stations of the cross in a passion play. This here is what good selling can be. And it's what, you will see, I think, Okada do quite regularly. It's more understated selling, but it is selling nonetheless. And if you're paying attention, it's incredibly logical and just adds a whole level of physical credibility to the contest.
Steve Williams then hits a sick-looking vertical brainbuster, not a suplex, a brainbuster. Not as smooth as, say, like Shinya Hashimoto's or Eddie Guerrero's, but equally devastating as he just drops Kobashi. This the first one. He does another one later, but this one he drops him on his head, and Kobashi, like the impact forces Kobashi to roll out of the ring because he knows if Williams gets on top of him, he's done for.
It's one of those spots where both guys, within the logic of the match, take it as an opportunity to get a breather, and it makes total sense, right? For Kobashi, it's out of that survival instinct, but for Williams, it's because he's been dealing with this onslaught from Kobashi for the last few minutes, so he needs that breather just to collect himself and come at Kobashi again at an even keel. So it's very much an equalizing move in the structure of the match.
Williams follows Kobashi out to the outside of the ring, and now it's his turn to dish out some punishment. He drops Kobashi's throat across the barricade, which gets him a 2 count after he throws Kobashi back into the ring. Doc tries for some submissions with a neck lock and a camel clutch, and then hits another devastating-looking brainbuster. This one actually looks like Kobashi lands on his shoulders and the back of his neck, but that's got to suck too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kobashi's. I mean, that's kind of another kind of thing that mirrors from the '93 match here is the way that it's Williams who is kind of like immediately sort of saying, "Okay, I got to go for his neck because it took it took me dropping him on his head 3 times to put him down that time." He's the one who sort of has that immediate targeting of Kobashi's neck this time, and you can begin to see this frustration beginning to appear on Williams's face as that damage isn't really sticking, or at least at this point, wearing Kobashi down that much that Kobashi is popping up from that pair of brainbusters pretty well.
Doc continues to dominate with a beautiful looking spine buster and 2 separate bear hugs. And if you look at Dr. Death's arms, Bruce, like you do not want to be in this vice-like grip of this man with these like massive fucking arms.
No, he's absolutely yoked to the gills here. And the fact that he then, not to steal your thunder, but he turns one of these bear hugs as she's trying to fight out of it, turns one of those into this crazy overhead belly to belly. Like, this is how you get a crowd invested in what people might derogatorily call a rest hold. You turn it into a setup for something legitimately devastating like this sick release suplex. And the crowd will pay more attention to it the next time it's applied. You don't necessarily have to suplex him the next time you get a bear hug on, but it's in the back of the audience's mind, and it gives something that might just be viewed as kind of a space filler or whatever, a real sense of drama.
I mean, the thing with it, this over the, like, he's got him in the bear hug. He yokes him over his fucking head, like, from a stationary position. It's not like he's shooting him into the ropes and then using the momentum of that to, like, take him over. He is throwing this man who's about 260 pounds legit over his fucking head. And like, it's one thing to do it to someone smaller than you and lighter than you. Kobashi is about the same size as him and probably weighs just as much, if not a little bit more than him. And it goes to Dr. Death's reputation of being like this fucking powerhouse. Like, if you ever seen him in NWA, where he's like, press slamming big boss man when he's Bubba Rogers, and he's like maybe 200 pounds heavier than he was when he was the boss man. That's pretty impressive. And like, he's like shown feats of strength against people like Danny Spivey. I'm pretty sure he did something with Sid Vicious, and like Sid Vicious, like, for him to get manhandled a bit by someone else is goes to show you, like, okay, I respect Dr. Death, so I'm not gonna fuck with him.
Yeah, it's just that sort of brute strength that, I mean, I don't know. We can criticize the idea that, like, oh, like big muscly guys, held sway over North American wrestling for so long or something like that. But if they're actually doing incredible feats of strength like this and tossing around somebody of Kenta Kobashi's size like he's the proverbial sack of potatoes, that grabs your attention, and that's something that I don't think has ever or will ever leave professional wrestling. At least, touch wood, God willing, that it never does.
Williams turns to his collegiate football roots and goes for a running tackle, but Kobashi catches it with a giant bobble-like neck breaker. They go back and forth until Dr. Death tries for the dangerous backdrop driver, but Kobashi counters with a flurry of elbows, because he knows, like, this is survival instinct here. Like, he knows that if he hits it, he's fucked. But he starts landing this flurry of elbows to the back of Williams' neck and counters with a DDT. He then follows up with this sick-looking jumping DDT. Like, he jumps in the air while holding onto Doc's neck and then just drives his head into the canvas, and I'm like, well, Doc must be dead here.
Those are some of the, like, those jumping DDTs are something that he was going to later on in their previous match. And again, he's able to get that, like, heavy duty offense out way earlier in this match, again, with a lot more kind of like control and drive and whatnot. So you're sort of thinking, like, oh Jesus, like, what, we're 15 minutes in or something like that, 12 minutes in at this point. Like, what are these guys gonna have left into the tank? And oh boy, they have a lot left in the tank.
They have a lot left. More chops to Doc's neck, and then he puts a sleeper hold on Williams, and then he transitions that into a neck breaker. And Bruce, in probably my favorite sequence of the match, Kobashi goes for the lariat, but Dr. Death throws him over his head with this judo-like toss. But Kobashi recovers quickly from that and just fucking blasts Dr. Death with his second attempt at the lariat. And I thought he has sent this man to fucking Mars.
It's okay. Look, I know I was talking about how, your Tom Lawlers have been on this, podcast before, but let me tell you something, WH. I took judo for 4 years at the community center at the town I grew up in when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So I think I know what I'm talking about here. No, in all seriousness, with regards to that judo throw thing here, you do see after he gets tossed, you see Kobashi roll through that toss exactly as you are taught to in most forms of judo wrestling, and as such he's able to just roll out of that and come back with that lariat. It's not him like no selling a flat back bumper or anything like that. This is where I'd say we're stepping things up. We're kind of probably now into about the middle third of the match. Both guys are having to pivot from whatever their initial strategies and understandings of their opponent were, and I think wrestle in a much more reactive way. The pace is speeding up, but it's not just like, okay, spam a bunch of shit. It's, okay, what has my opponent exposed? What can I transition into from where I am right now? What quick counter can I come up with? Like rolling out of that throw and coming back with a lariat. It's not, we're not at the finishing sequence or the crescendo, as you like to say, WH, but we're well into the thick of it. And I think that sense of desperation and fire that we've been talking about with Kobashi is starting to emerge here.
Kobashi decides to give Williams a taste of his own medicine, but Dr. Death counters with his own elbows to the back of the neck, but Kobashi counters with a great-looking dropkick to Doc's back, which staggers him long enough for Kobashi to get his own back chop driver, but it's not as high angle or as dangerous as Doc's. Kobashi winds up for a running lariat, but Doc cold cocks Kobashi straight with a fucking punch to the jaw. And I love when wrestling gets really like bare bones and it's like, oh, you know what? Fuck this. We're turning this into a fight now.
Just a straight punch to the face, and I think if we're talking about kind of, wrestlers working a non-brawling style, and it happens sort of, in the middle of a match that has been this sort of, power move focused up until now, it stands out and it has way more impact, both, proverbially and literally, than it would have otherwise.
Doc goes in to continue his assault, but Kobashi blocks a strike. And then, for good measure, cold cocks Doc in the face as a receipt, and then follows up with another lariat that sends Dr. Death to the Shadow Realm, but it's only for a 2 count.
Instant karma there with the instant receipt. Okay, there was some mention on the Japanese commentary at this point about the Champion Carnival. They mentioned, I could hear the commentary mentioning that a couple of times. So I don't know if there was some callback to that match that they'd had a few months before, or if you were able to understand what the commentary was saying there, WH. Not to be, thirsty on Maine, but if anybody out there has a link to that 1994 Champion Carnival match, get at me in the DMs. Also, very fast 2 count after that lariat there, ref. I'm just going to say it. That was a fast count.
How dare you slander the great Kyohei Wada, you bastard. You take that back. Kobashi hits 2 leg drops, one across the throat, and then one to the back of the neck. The problem for Kobashi with this strategy of going after Doc, because he actually wants to try to use the backdrop driver on Doc as kind of revenge, I think. The problem for Kobashi is that Dr. Death doesn't have a neck. He just has a fucking tree trunk, right? In place of it.
It's like, a Tomohiro Ishii match or something, of all of the targets that might appear on a diagram of Steve Williams during like the mission prep graphic, your classic like 90s Japanese, top down shoot 'em ups, where like the target on the big alien ship is there. The neck is not the like flashing red one on the Steve Williams diagram. Go for a toe hold, go for a wrist lock. Don't try to like chop away at that like 80-year-old redwood trunk.
It's not the exhaust port on the first Death Star.
No, it definitely isn't. Definitely isn't.
He also starts laying in some massive chops to the back of Dr. Death's neck. Kobashi drags Doc to the ropes and drapes his neck across the second rope and hits a running leg drop while on the apron, driving Doc throat first across the rope. There's a series of slaps from Kobashi to Dr. Death, and then follows with a running straight boot to Williams' solar plexus. Like, have you ever been straight kicked in the chest, Bruce? I have. It sucks.
It's terrible, and it's relatable. It's something that we can all empathize with.
Dr. Death fires back with what looks like a double chop to the face of Kobashi. I love when people get hit in the face, to be quite honest with you.
There was that kind of like falling forward double chop, and then as Kobashi goes for another lariat, and then Williams kind of gets him over with this kind of like slightly tottering sort of slam or suplex. And like I said, I'm not, the amateur wrestling guy. Again, for that, you'll need to get the aforementioned Brandon from New Jersey on to really take you to the mat class.
He's never being on the show. Stop mentioning that.
But, from what little I know about wrestling, it's like those sorts of almost kind of like tottering carryover slams or suplex that actually happen within, legit amateur wrestling. And with Williams's background, he's able to make something that isn't like crisp or elegant or smooth in the way that we often praise in pro wrestling look completely legit rather than just like, oh, that was an awkward move, or oh, that was a botch or whatever. Even this sort of like struggling to get Kobashi over slam looks hugely impactful.
I think this is the part where I'm at in my notes. Like Kobashi tries for another lariat, but Dr. Death catches him and gets him up and over with a modified slam. I think this is the one you're talking about.
Yep.
This allows Dr. Death to shoot Kobashi into the ropes, where he then catches him and press, and he has an overhead press, like the Ultimate Warrior. Or you see Dr. Death, this is a very common move for Dr. Death. He gets him Kobashi up in this press. Like, this is like a man who is like super fucking heavy. He's a human being. It's different than lifting weights. And then he decides, you know what? Fuck you. He throws Kobashi outside of the ring to the mats. And I just said, fuck.
If I'm remembering correctly, again, there's another little callback to the 93 match where Williams sort of like kind of drops, like falls back with Kobashi kind of from that press position. But that's sort of him just kind of like leaning back and, kind of Kobashi's weight kind of carrying him over. This is like the same thing, but with an active throw, with active spite. Like this real sense of, you know what? Fuck this guy.
This is an uncontrolled throw. Like,
No.
Like he's not trying to throw him into the audience, obviously, but he throws him and Kobashi's landing is not controlled.
No.
Let's just say that this man legit could have broken like his fucking legs with this throw.
God, amazing,
tremendous. Dr. Death follows up with a flying shoulder tackle from the apron to Kobashi, who is on the floor. William tries to suplex Kobashi back into the ring, but his response is Kobashi's response is to slap and chop Doc away from him. Kobashi decides to climb to the top, but Dr. Death catches him with headbutts to his kidneys. And this is amazing. This is what are we into? Like 30 minutes of this match? Maybe, Bruce? Dr. Death then hits a legit scary as fuck looking an overhead belly to belly suplex from the goddamn top rope. And sends Kobashi flying across the fucking ring.
Talking about control and whatnot with the previous spot and everything, I cannot fathom the strength that it takes not only to do this, not only to do an overhead belly to belly on a man of Kobashi's size from the top rope, but to do it with the relative confidence that I hope to God Steve Williams had in doing this, that he was like 99% certain that he'd actually be able to get Kobashi over enough for a proper flat back bump rather than just breaking his fucking neck. Like, this is like the legacy that I think those like recent like Jeff Cobb and Shingo matches have been carrying on. The difference is just maybe, I mean, Jeff Cobb is not a small boy, but both of these guys are about his size, if not bigger here. And great.
I mean, the balance, the sheer athleticism of Steve Williams, the balance,
core strength. It's just, I mean, this is like, when we talk about, like legitimate athletic strength or, pound for pound strength that everybody always talks about Castagnoli having and things like that. Like, this is stuff that you cannot do just being a bodybuilder that, gets trained for a few months or something like that. This is stuff that comes from a lifetime of amateur wrestling and pro football and those sorts of, and the workout regimes that those demand. And it's not just pure strength, because like these guys have still got fucking gas to go in the remainder of this match.
The endurance, like, I mean, obviously the endurance and conditioning of anyone who worked All Japan in the 90s is unparalleled, really, in wrestling before or since. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people who have great fucking stamina, of course. I'm not saying there isn't, but like, my God, like some of the bombs that these people do to each other is just unfucking believable. So from this belly to belly suplex from the top rope, you think maybe Doc's feeling confident enough to pin him. No, he doesn't go for the pin. He just pushes referee Kyo Iwata out of the way so he can then grab Kobashi and then hit his signature Doctor Bomb for a 2.95 count. I love the Doctor Bomb. I think it's a great fucking move.
It's great. I love, anybody, whether it's Willow Nightingale or anybody else who uses it. I currently have it as one of my signature moves in my install of Fight Forever, if I'm recalling correctly. Also on this pin attempt here, the camera is, at least on the version I was watching, the camera is right behind the ref, blocking the view of Kobashi's right shoulder, which is what he's able to get up out of the Dr. Bomb. So it feels even that much closer of a near fall, I think, to the TV audience. And after this moment, you get the sense, to kind of go back to my, shoot 'em up video game metaphor here, like Kobashi is completely flashing, like not just red, he's flashing purple. Like any single move properly delivered from Williams could finish Kobashi off from this point onward.
Dr. Death tries for the backdrop driver, but Kobashi grabs the ropes. Doc then switches to the Oklahoma Stampede, and he rams Kobashi into one turnbuckle and then a second one. But Kobashi is able to keep his bearings enough to hang on for dear life to the ropes. So Doc lets go of him, and then decides to drop some knees into Kobashi's face, and then just starts stomping on him. And it's basically, hey, you ruined my finisher, you bastard.
Yeah, between this and again in the 93 match, just the disrespect that was shown to the Oklahoma Stampede here, I think really got in Williams's craw.
Doc goes for another stampede, but Kobashi is able to shift his weight after the first turnbuckle and gets Doc down for a 2 count. Dr. Death recovers and picks Kobashi up, but big mistake as Kobashi blasts fucking Dr. Death with a beautiful looking enziguri, and then follows up with a low altitude drop kick to Doc's knee. There's a spinning back chop to Doc's face, followed by the Baba dropping neck breaker, a body slam to Doc, and then Kobashi climbs to the top rope. He's going for his fucking moonsault, but Doc catches him, but eats a flying shoulder tackle from Kobashi instead. This is just like, again, like back and forth. You think one guy's going to get the advantage, but they don't. And it could go either way, Bruce, at this point.
This is a great fucking sequence, specifically, I think, because it starts with that drop kick to the knee. And there we go. He's working something other than the neck, thank God. Like the crowd reaction, if you listen to the crowd reaction to that drop kick, was huge. And I think it's because this was the first kind of breathing room, like let alone hope spot, you've seen from Kobashi in a while. And to, reiterate that point off of the top, a crowd will cheer for this man the instant he gives them a fraction of a reason to do so. And finding this one little gap or this one little weakness in this absolute tank of a human that is Steve Williams and Williams's reaction to the knee, and it's going to happen again in a minute, immediately, that's something that the crowd picks up on. Again, I'm preaching to the choir here, speaking to you about this, WH. Going back and watching the matches from this era with these All Japan crowds, and this was something that stuck out to me with when I started watching even like newer, New Japan like 10 years ago, watching the way that this crowd will react to something like just, it's a drop kick to the knee or whatever. The way that crowd reacts tells you about the investment, the intelligence, and the care and attention, I think, that this audience is giving the product that they are watching, and the respect that they have for it as storytelling that happens within the bell to bell.
Well, I mean, they're educated, right? Because they believe it's a sport,
and
it's presented to them as a sport, especially in this time period. That okay, these guys are doing things that like not, of course, not in a real fight, but to them, like when you watch wrestling, like you want to give yourself over to the idea that it is real, right? Like that's what I like to do. And when I watch these matches, especially like comparing it to wrestling today, I don't think any of it's real, to be quite honest with you. Like when I watch wrestling from this period, it's like, shit, they're really fucking hurting each other for good or bad, like however you want to look at that. But it feels real to me. And I do enjoy that aspect of it. I think, with your point about this drop kick to the knee, my when I'm watching it, my gut reaction is that, okay, Kobashi's tired of fucking Dr. Death picking him up, throwing him outside to the ring, overhead, suplexing him off the top fucking rope. I think he's so smart about being, like with his psychology, that he's like thinking, I'm going to drop kick to the knee because then I'm going to take away his base. And he can't fucking do these moves to me if he can't stand on like both legs. right?
And that's a move that he would not have made, or at least the version of Kobashi that we saw the last time, or at least the 93 match. I don't think he's making this sort of a move. He's fighting much more desperate rather than with
Yet
that degree of savvy and control.
you have to think that within a year of wrestling for All Japan, that you are going to pick up so much more experience and like ring savvy, and just like, okay, this didn't work against this guy. This is like his third match with Dr. Death. Of course, there's the
Mhm.
93 match that we keep referring to, but there's also the Champion Carnival match they had more recently. So these are things that Kobashi has in the back of his mind, and like they are presented as real athletes. So it's like, okay, I've got a strategy. I've watched the videotape back and forth. I've been like coaching with fucking Misawa, who's been telling me, don't do this, go for this. You want to take away Doc's strength and his power, you have to go for his base. You don't bother with his arms or his fucking neck or his back, because that's not going to work. Go for his knees.
And again, to get back to the idea of, like, both real sports and the idea of storytelling here and whatnot. I don't know. I'll get on my high horse about this maybe at the end of all
Sure.
of this. But so much of the discourse that we currently have about storytelling and what it is or is not in wrestling, I feel as though there's a large number of people who make comments or claims about that who don't think about or aren't aware of or have no respect for the way that stories and narratives emerge organically in real, shoot, whatever you want to call it, sports. Every baseball game that I watch has a story to it. Every boxing match has a story to it. Those things emerge organically out of, exactly as you're saying there, the strengths and weaknesses and strategies of the respective competitors. And I think people just need to, not everybody, most of the people listening to this podcast, I'm sure, don't have any problem with this, but I think people just need to recognize that that is the original form of storytelling. I think that pro wrestling is built upon. It's the purest. It's the one that happens without any promos. It's the one that happens without anything specific to television production or anything like that. It's the one that doesn't rely on bells and whistles. It relies upon two people being able to build something organic and, again, natural, that feels the way that is somebody's strategy going into a sumo match does, that a pitcher goes into when he takes the mound and knows the weaknesses and strengths of the batters he's going to be facing. Like, all of those things are storytelling. And it's here, and it's in this match, and it's wonderful.
There's a backdrop driver from Kenta Kobashi to Williams, but it's not enough to keep Dr. Death down. There's another attempt at the backdrop driver, but Doc blocks it with elbows to the neck. But Kobashi starts driving his knee into Doc's face. I love this. This is great. And then hits the ropes and hits a great looking jumping knee to Dr. Death's face. Just the variety in the offense from Kobashi. He's not relying on lariats. He's not relying on chops or elbows to the back of the neck. That's one of the great things about Kobashi, is that he doesn't rely on necessarily on the same things like in every match. He's gonna add some things here and there. This is gonna work. It's not like the jumping knee to someone's face is not something that you normally see in a Kenta Kobashi match. But he thought, hey, I'm gonna escape this move by like fucking throwing my knee into Doc's face because it's right there. My knees are there, and then I'm gonna follow up with a fucking hit the ropes and hit him with a fucking jumping knee to the face.
That's, I think, in addition to just the, oh my God, the ridiculous, high spots and power spots that we've been talking about, those are the little details that have kept me coming back to this match over the years, or at least that I've begun to notice. Like I said, the million and one times I pulled that 10-hour video up, because they come across as being entirely organic and natural, but reflective of that sort of reactive intelligence that I think Kobashi is showing up there in terms of what parts of Williams are exposed, or what opportunities his position within the ring affords him. And he has this, like, just as you're saying, just that real variety of offense. And, not to like, whatever, throw shade at, quote, technical wrestlers or submission wrestlers or whatever it is. It's not just about having, I have a gazillion and one suplexes or a gazillion and one, rollover submission holds or anything like that. It's the fact that he's able to come at Williams from so many different angles, kind of at the drop of a dime whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Kobashi hits a German suplex with the bridge for a near fall on Williams. Kobashi hits his moonsault finally for a 2.9 count. There's a pair of leg drops to keep Doc on the mat as Kobashi tries for a third moonsault, but Doc is able to move out of the way at the last minute. Dr. Death swats away a Kobashi dropkick, but is not ready for another dropkick to the knee, which sends Williams crashing to the outside.
I love everything about this particular sequence. This is starting with the moonsault there, because this is a callback to the previous match again, where Kobashi presses his luck with a second moonsault and comes up empty. But this time, and that happened in the previous match, but this time, because Williams has evaded it rather than countered it with the knees, Kobashi stays cool. He doesn't panic. He switches gears. Oh, you dodged that first drop kick? Hey, didn't I fuck your knee up pretty nicely with that one shot a couple of minutes ago? Oh, look what's an easy target. There we go. I love everything about that sequence. Kobashi misses, but doesn't immediately turn into like a whimpering, panicking baby. He just keeps pressing the advantage he still has. He wrestles with passion, but he also wrestles smart. Intelligence should not just be the purview of heels within wrestling matches. How can you not be rooting for this guy right now?
Dr. Death starts selling the knee like it's broken. It's so great. He's so good at selling. Dr. Death. Doc gets back onto the apron, but Kobashi blasts him with a combo of different chops that send him crashing back onto the floor. Dr. Death is back on his feet, dazed and walking around on the floor. When Kobashi does, he hits the ropes and does a running. No, he doesn't hit the rope. He just kind of like circles around, like doesn't get a running start and does a running basement drop kick to fucking Dr. Death's head that knocks him back down onto the floor. Fucking great. There's a rolling savate kick to Doc's gut, followed by a jumping leg drop to Doc's neck. This is like if like the thing. It's like Kobashi's doing kind of like the Booker T scissors kick, right? Finisher, kind of with this leg drop. Like for him to get up this high, especially like fucking 35 minutes of this like brutal match after all the punishment he's taken, for him to get up with this fucking neck, like jumping leg drop onto his fucking neck. Holy shit. Kobashi's athleticism is just on another level, Bruce.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he doesn't have a huge amount of like high school. Does he have like a high school wrestling background or a high school, like because he kind of comes to the dojo sort of without much pedigree or without
his interest was always more in like I believe bodybuilding, right? Okay. And so like which wouldn't necessarily be able to give you the athleticism, of like jumping that high to give a leg drop to somebody's neck. There's more leg drops to Dr. Death as he's lying prone face down on the mat. And then Kobashi goes to the top rope and hits an avalanche leg drop to Dr. Death's face. And as it's funny because like Williams is like another part of the ring, and then he starts rolling, and as he rolls onto his back, that's perfect timing. That's when Kobashi hits him, and he lands on his fucking face. Amazing timing, and I don't think that's on purpose. I think that's a beautiful accident.
Okay. I have sort of always interpreted this as Williams kind of going like, "Oh fuck, he's on that pole. Yeah, he's not going to make that. He needs the extra 2 or 3 feet. I'm going to roll over." And look, if there is one very, very minor flaw in this entire match, if it is, as I've read it, it would be Williams kind of rolling into that leg drop rather than away from it.
No, you see, Bruce, I'm going to explain this to you. So it's logical. So there's some psychology to this. It's like Williams doesn't know where the fuck he is. You know what I mean? Like, yes, as a shoot, it's probably what you're saying. But in kayfabe, right? In the kayfabe of this match, he doesn't know where he is. He's like, Kobashi's on that side, so I'm going to roll to the other side. But he doesn't know that Kobashi's on the other side. That's why he rolls into the move.
He knows that, like, there's been all of these moonsaults and everything like that. He had to roll out of the way to evade the previous moonsault. Something like that is coming. He knows he has to move. He just can't pick up on which ring post Kobashi is on. Yeah. To keep it kayfabe, that's what's going on there. But it just it's just a little sticks out to me. But anyway, very, very
as devastating as this leg drop to the face is, it's not enough to keep Steve Williams down. Kobashi looks like he's about to cry with frustration at this point because he no matter what he does, no matter how many times he fucking like blasts Dr. Death with these fucking moves, Dr. Death is not staying down. Steve Williams is too fucking tough for him, and he's kind of like realizing this. Kobashi goes for a vertical suplex several times, but Steve Williams blocks them all. And then Kobashi switches to his jackknife folding powerbomb, which he hits, but can't keep hold of. He can't keep hold of Doc long enough to get the 3 count.
Whether by intent or accident, Kobashi only holding one leg after the rolling through on that powerbomb looks great. Like, those are the sorts of moves that I'm sure wrestling commentators see as just like down the pipe meatballs that they can square up on. Like, I don't speak Japanese, but I'd put money on the commentary saying something like, oh, if Kobashi had only been able to hold on to both of the legs rather than just one, this match would be over now. And again, whether that's intentional or not, perfectly plays into the match.
Kobashi assaults Dr. Death some more in the corner, but at the last minute, Steve Williams blasts out of the corner and knocks Kobashi down with a running tackle. Just beautiful stuff. And again, it's reactionary, but it's also within his repertoire that it totally makes sense that he would do this. Mm-hmm. Doc reverses an Irish whip and runs Kobashi into the corner while maintaining wrist control. I know one of your favorite things, Bruce, is maybe wrist control.
Oh, absolutely.
And he lands a body press and then follows up with another overhead belly to belly. He's recovered from those two. He's recovered enough from those two drop kicks to the knee. Mm-hmm. It's not enough to keep Kobashi down, though. There's another backdrop driver attempt. Kobashi blocks. Kobashi goes for a spinning back chop, but misses. There's a second attempt at the spinning back chop, but Doc catches him and is able to get him into position for the dangerous back chop driver. And drops Kobashi right on his fucking head. But guess what, Bruce? Kobashi won't stay down as Doc only gets a 2.5 count here.
I love, obviously, as we've been talking about, so much of this match has been built around Williams trying to hit the dangerous backdrop driver, Kobashi having gone through it several times before and knowing that it's, a potential instant lethality to him. And you've seen him, as we've talked about, you've seen him do work to kind of get out of position or avoid that move. But here, with those two kind of like spinning back chops that he goes for, everything that Kobashi has done has been, so much of it has been very, very measured, very precise, very controlled. But if you look at those kind of like spinning back chops, he's very wild with them. He's just kind of out of control. His excitement, his desperation starts to get the better of him here. And those two whiffs, are just enough for him to instantly pay the price for getting a bit wild there with a move that, could have, broken his neck, let alone ended the match.
Doc throws Kobashi down headfirst into the mat, but Kobashi gets right back up and hits another drop kick to the knee. Kobashi desperately goes for the backdrop driver onto Steve Williams, but Doc blocks it every time. Kobashi hits a lariat, but Doc grabs him and backdrop drivers Kobashi headfirst into the top turnbuckle. And holy fuck, I thought, oh my god, he's killed this man.
Like you were alluding to before, in terms of treating things like a sport, I don't necessarily like knowing how magicians do their tricks. But look, we can imagine, as observers, we can imagine how it's possible for Kobashi to have ameliorated some of the damage done by the previous backdrop drivers, or, more recently, there was like that reverse angle, which showed how sort of Omega actually took the Tiger Driver 91 from Ospreay. But I cannot conceive of any way that Kobashi could anticipate or account for having his head slammed into that turnbuckle at that completely random angle off of this move. He sort of gets one hand up on the top rope as he's coming down, but you get the sense that that's like legit, like, I'm just flailing and going to try to grab onto anything to try to soften this, but he has no idea where he's going or how to soften it going into that turnbuckle. Just, yeah.
So Kobashi is completely out of it, and so is Dr. Death. But even though he's just as dazed as Kobashi is, Dr. Death senses the blood in the water like a shark, and then he finally hits a backdrop driver, but with a bridge, to finally get the 1, 2, 3 on Kenta Kobashi in 41 minutes and 23 seconds in a match that does not feel like it's 41 minutes long. To me, it feels like it's more like a 25-minute mark match, because like just so much happens and it's such an exciting match. And then there's no really lull periods in this match. It's all
Definitely.
action.
Yeah, it keeps you going the whole way through, to the point that when I first pulled up like a standalone video of this, rather than again watching it in that long block there, I was like, oh wait, is this actually the right match? Because yeah, that match that I've seen a bunch of times before, that's only like 23 minutes long. It's not like 40 or 50 minutes long. What is this? Yeah, it's just absolutely all killer, no filler here. Obviously, Kobashi does not get the win, but I think you can see the progression that he has made as as an intelligent wrestler, as somebody that can rally the crowd behind him in an instant. And you can see that, okay, fine, it's not today, but at a moment's notice, the trigger could be pulled on him, and he could be given the illustrious Triple Crown here. And certainly, if, the Misawa thing has happened, what, like 4 years ago, something like that, the audible on Misawa or something like that. So again, that audience is aware of that sort of thing, right? And I think they are entirely buying the fact that Williams could be being used as a transitional champion to get the championship over from Misawa to Kobashi here.
Well, he is a transitional champion, but
Well,
it's
yes.
not for Kobashi.
yes.
It would be to Toshiaki Kawada. After this match, what a match. First of all, let's say that. But after the match, there's the post match is great, because both men are down, and Dr. Dweth recovers, and like Johnny Ace is there because he's, Johnny Ace is allied with Steve Williams at this point. Terry Gordy's pretty much gone because of his personal issues.
Spivey's there too, I think, right?
Spivey wouldn't be in his corner because he's paired with Stan Hansen.
All right.
But yeah, Doc, he wants to, he knows, wow, I've had a fucking great match with this guy and he's fucking amazing. So he goes over to Kobashi and shows respect to him by hugging him, bring him up, getting him on his feet, hugging him, and just saying, like, one more time, let's do it one more time. I love seeing this kind of sportsmanship in wrestling because it is so rare, actually.
Rare, well, it's maybe not as rare as it should be, but when it is earned in the way that it is here, it's absolutely what you want to see. And even before he goes up and approaches Kobashi, there's a spot where Williams is just kind of seated as I think it's Johnny Ace is kind of coming in beside him and icing him down or whatever it is. And he just has this kind of like it's kind of a glazed or a dazed look, but it's also this like, wow look on his face that I have to believe is entirely legitimate. In the first match that we were talking about, Williams puts Kobashi away with, boom, those three, backdrop drivers. In this match, Williams survives Kobashi. He feels like he is a fundamentally different person after having endured this sort of match here. In terms of my larger thoughts about the match overall, I'd like to think, WH, that I'm a pretty amiable guy. When I do postmarks and on the New Japan shows that I do with Karen, and I don't mean to go into business for myself here with on your turf with this, but oh my God, does more modern wrestling need more of this stuff? And again, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't need me to convince you. WH has been spreading the gospel for a long while now. But if you cannot get into the passion, the drama, the intensity, and the beauty of this match, you and I watch pro wrestling for very different reasons. Kobashi is the ultimate fiery babyface. He's slowly being schooled. He's being hardened and tempered by these sorts of battles that he is having with these indestructible tanks like Steve Williams. And again, if you're one of these people who needs storytelling in your wrestling, I hope that the last hour or so has showed that there's plenty of story both in this match and how it links to both men's careers, both with and without one another. And if you're still having trouble seeing the story after all of that, I don't know, get better at watching wrestling, because this match fucking rules.
Bruce, if I saw an equivalent of this on, like, say, a fucking indie show, right? It'd be like two guys wrestling each other for fucking 20 minutes. hitting each other with fucking like some stiff chops and kicks to each other, and dropping each other on each other's heads, and then like, you know, the whoever wins, and the other guy shakes his hand, and the fucking crowd, all these fucking marks, gonna chant both these guys. And if I was in that audience, I would say, fuck all you fucking people. You just watch some bullshit and you're all a bunch of fucking idiots. And I'd leave the fucking building and I would never come back to that promotion again. That's just how I would feel, because this is real wrestling. A lot of what I see today is just fucking pretend shit, like where they think they're on some kind of level to this because they hit each other really fucking hard and drop each other on each other's heads. No, there's a story to this. There's like passion and there's thought to it, and it plays to the strengths of both men. And if you tell me like, oh, that show I saw on, you know, IWTV from fucking Delaware or something was like the equivalent of this, fuck off.
I'm not delusional.
saying I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like some fucking idiot was gonna say that to me. I'd be like, fuck off. You don't know what you're talking about.
No. I mean, to have stuff of this caliber also requires athletes of this caliber, and also the training and long-term booking, you know, and development, maybe even more so than booking, the development, you know, that maybe is difficult for people to do for various reasons here. But even as we're waxing, you know, lyrical and rhapsodical about all this, the fact that the triumphant stupidity of "I Love It Loud" by Kiss, Steve Williams' music, is playing as all of this happens, is just perfect. That is just this big dumb thudding drum beat and just the call and response.
Honestly, one of the greatest entrance themes of all time to me. Like when he comes out or Gordy comes out to it, or they come out together to Kiss "I Love It Loud." It's wow, fuck. It sends goosebumps down your spine.
It's a song and a band I would never really want to hear outside of this context. Like, I don't want Kiss just showing up on my workout playlist or anything like that. I don't really like Kiss at all, but boy howdy, this is the perfect environment for just this, you know, massive tank of a guy who has wrecked people in American wrestling, has wrecked dudes in the NFL, and is now just pummeling and erasing the neck of, you know, Japan's great hope that's on the horizon and kind of waiting in the wings here. Just that big triumphant, you know, exclamation point to musically stick on the end of this match.
So we just wrap it up by saying this actually would be Steve Williams' only successful title defense of the Triple Crown, as he would lose that title to Toshiaki Kawada about a month later on October 22nd, 1994, and he was a transition champion from Misawa to Kawada, because Baba just didn't want to do it. You know, he didn't want to do that put Kawada on getting the win over Misawa for a long time. And
you gotta wait for that.
But he should have done it. Like, I think he should have done it. Like, I'm not sure necessarily 94, but he should have done it before when he actually did it, and he did it and he booked it in such a bullshit way. Is one of his flaws as a booker, was that he never wanted Kawada to have a definitive win over Misawa, because Misawa was his son, essentially. But that brings us to the end of this match. I gave it 5 stars. It's a 5-star match. Easy for me. I think Dave Meltzer gave it a 4.75 or something like that.
And he gave a 5 to the previous one, the 93 one. And I'm kind of flipped on that. The previous one's a 4.5 or 4.75 for me. And yeah, this is a straight up 5 for me.
This is a 5. There's that one's good. It's great. But I think this one is better because it has more resonance based on the 93 match as well.
They would go on to have singles matches in, I think, like 96, 97, 98, and even what I have to imagine is a pretty diminished Williams by 2000. I'm kind of, I want to push forward with these. I don't know that I want to push all the way forward to 2000 era Williams. What would you advise, or what would you suggest in terms of watching the 96, 97? You think that's safe?
97, I think he's still good enough.
Right.
And he's probably saving a lot of his like big stuff for someone like Kobashi or Misawa. Like, he likes them. He hates Kawada, like, legit. Him and Kawada never got along. So yeah, I mean, I think by 2099, 2000, his value is more as the veteran tag team wrestler to someone coming up, like say Gary Albright, for example, in the Triangle of Power, the team that they form, or and he does. I think he does team with and wins tag team titles with Vader when Vader comes in as well. Williams' value is as like a guy now to put over other people or to give them the rub being his tag team partner. So by that point, but 97, he's still good enough, right? And 97, I think, when does he go to the WWF?
I think is it 99 that the Brawl for All is?
Yeah. So he goes, fails, unfortunately, comes back. And like, Bob, because he left on good terms with Baba, so he was or and Misawa, and so like it was okay for him to be able to kind of come back and stuff. But yeah, that brings us to the conclusion of this excellent match that we got to watch. And Bruce, do you have any what's the word I'm looking for? Any plugs and any final thoughts about this match or anything?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're aware of all things happening within the post wrestling world, you might be aware that the latest episode of Postmarks with my co-host David Myers and I speaking with Mark Polisel of C4 Wrestling of Ottawa is free for everyone to listen to at the Post Wrestling Cafe. David and I just got another couple episodes with members of the Post community in the can, and I think people will really enjoy those conversations in the months ahead. Much like the Elite, just earlier today, I came to terms with Post's own Tony Khan, John Pollock, about continuing to cover New Japan shows for the site alongside your friend and mine, WH, Karen Peterson. So we will have some key cards covered as New Japan moves on from the G1 and towards Wrestle Kingdom with Karen and myself in the months ahead. If you want to find me anywhere, I'm Contrasoma. That's Contrasoma on most socials, Twitter, Last.fn, Untapped, RIP to Grapple. And as I mentioned earlier, my friend Alex and I write and podcast about what we like to call darker alternatives, kind of goth and industrial music, things like that, at idieyouDie.com and on the We Have a Technical podcast. WH, I know that you're a fan of both New Order and the Smiths and Contentious Opinions. So you might enjoy the Listen Along commentary podcast where we went in on the first record by Electronic, the collaboration between Bernard Sumner and Johnny Marr, which, unlike this collaboration between Kobashi and Williams, does not hold up in the cold light of day.
How dare you? How dare you? It's not just fucking Johnny Marr and Bernard Sumner, fucking Chris Lowe and fucking Neil Tennant from Pet Shop Boys.
They are the silver lining on that record. Anything Pet Shop Boys is always going to have.
What do you think about Peter Hook's side band Monaco?
Oh, gee, Monaco. I don't know. I mean, of all of the post New Order side projects, like none of them are good qua good, and certainly none of them are good in comparison to even mediocre New Order records, as far as I'm concerned. Of all of them, it's not that they're actually literally better, but I kind of like the other two records by Jillian and Steven, just because they're so unassuming. And those are just two likable people who haven't spent the last 15 years kind of publicly arguing with one another in the press and belittling, the legacy of both of those bands that they're involved with. Everybody loves Steven and Jillian, and them just kind of noodling around doing some cute synth pop is fine.
As my friend Cole would say, blip blop music. I love blip blop music.
Yes.
Do you ever want to review Future Sound of London's ISDN record? You let me know. Okay.
I can get down with some FSOL, but no, in all seriousness, WH, it was a real privilege to be invited on here. I always learn so much listening to you and the guests that you have on about a period of time and a group of wrestlers that I am always eager to know more about. When I listen to the Long and Winding Royal Road, I always end up with a whole bunch of homework to do, a whole bunch of tabs open in my browsers, more reading, more matches. But invariably, it ends up amplifying my understanding and appreciation of wrestling, both new and old. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for saying so, Bruce. It means a lot to me. Hey, if for my plugs, hey, at WH Park 9 on most socials. So sometimes I don't accept people's friend requests. Because a lot of my socials are actually personal,
prerogative,
kind of personal things. So, but that being said, if you like this show, go support it. If you want to be cool like Eddie Kingston, go buy the the fucking t-shirt. Not that one. That's still available, of course, but the new one, the more recent one with the 5 pillars with Jun Akiyama included in the imagery. Eddie loves that fucking shirt, man. He's wearing it fucking everywhere.
It keeps popping up.
Fucking Ribera Steakhouse where you got the jacket. He's wearing that fucking shirt underneath his fucking newly acquired Ribera jacket. You don't know how much that popped me. And then he's showing up at like fucking press conferences, sneaking his head in, and it's like he's wearing the fucking t-shirt. God bless you, Eddie Kingston, for fucking loving that shirt.
Hell yeah.
But you can buy that shirt too at store.postwrestling.com. And it's as Way says, WH, you're the best seller of all time at the merch store at postwrestling.com. And what can I say? There you go. For me, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks for continually supporting the show with likes on when we post it up on social media. And we got like the rest of the year to look forward to. I have some ideas of things I want to do. I think next month, like I haven't talked to the person I want to get on as a guest next month, Bruce, but like I'm pretty sure I have a special match lined up for them to talk about with me outside of the normal purview of this show, which is the All Japan in the 90s. We might be going to the early 80s with the next show because we want to talk about the late great Terry Funk, who recently passed away, RIP. And so like my next guest, who I won't say until we actually signed them, I'm pretty sure when I present him with this like idea, this match, do you want to talk about this match with me? I'm thinking he'll say yes, and then I'll find out who I'm talking about next month. And until then, to everyone listening, thank you and goodbye.